So thread lifts work, they're very simple really, but that we are repositioning the facial tissues, the superficial facial tissues. So what happens with the aging process is that the superficial fat and skin comes down with gravity. It's lost the connections to the deeper layers which hold it up, and simply gravity, the force of gravity, brings the tissue down. And we start to see these changes maybe in the 30s and 40s, but certainly by the time people get to the 50s, they'll see gravitational descent of these tissues. And it creates the nasolabial fold, the marionette fold, and the jowl, and the loss of jawline. So we're simply placing threads in that subdermal layer, the layer beneath the skin, to lift and anchor those fat pads back to their more youthful position. So we're effectively creating like a facelift effect, although we're just working in those superficial tissues. And it's an instant result through minimal trauma to place these threads in. So it's been a very popular treatment in the clinic. So the patients who are suitable for a thread lift is really anybody, male or female, where we're starting to see the descent of the superficial fat pads. So that effectively means that we're seeing the skin with the superficial fat coming down, creating the jowl and the nasolabial folds. And anybody really where a little lift just reproduces the more youthful effect that they had. So the ages that I tend to find is that, we start to see these changes probably from the early to mid 30s, and it progressively gets worse as we get older. So anybody really from the ages of mid 30s up to the early 60s can be a candidate for thread lifting. The patients who are not really suitable for thread lifting are those where there isn't that gravitational effect. They may have just lost volume and we need to replace that volume. Or the patients who have much heavier tissues which are really creating a lot of weight beneath the skin, and they may not be suitable for thread lifting, and more likely those patients would actually need to have a surgical facelift. So a lot of my patients come and they may have seen a thread lift being done on YouTube or sort of similar, and the first thing is they're sort of put off because it looks like it's an extremely painful procedure. In fact, it's not really. We do it with the placement of local anaesthetic in the injections in the right place, and most of my patients find that it's a very tolerable procedure to insert these threads. The threads, once they're inserted, are not seen, and at the end of the treatment the patient's not in any pain or distress. So it takes about an hour or so to place the threads underneath the skin and correct and lift the tissues. And as I say, with anaesthetic, it's not a painful procedure. So a lot of patients ask, and are fearful of having thread lifting because they feel that there's going to be a long recovery period. In fact, actually, it's quite a quick recovery period. We insert the threads through little tiny holes that are made in the skin with a needle, and they really heal up within a day or two. Most people don't see where the threads have gone in, and there may be a little bruising or swelling following the procedure, but a lot of patients don't even get these symptoms. They may feel some discomfort, just some tightness underneath the skin, and they may feel a little bit more uncomfortable, perhaps eating and lying for a week or two. We normally say that it's best to avoid any exercise where you're actually jumping up and down, sort of aerobics, jogging, running, horse riding, things like that, for a couple of weeks afterwards, just to allow those threads to do their work and settle into the tissues. But certainly after 2 weeks, all of my patients are back to normal activities, including all sports. So when these threads have been inserted, they're creating initially a mechanical lift of the tissues. And these threads are made, certainly the threads that I use, and I use predominantly Silhouette Soft and Aptos threads, are made of materials that are long lasting. It can take up to a year or even longer for the threads to completely be broken down. But in the process, once they've been inserted, they will start to stimulate collagen, your natural collagen around the threads, and that further enhances the result and can maintain the result even when the threads themselves have lost structural integrity and disappeared. So we often see, certainly in younger patients, the results of thread lifting to last in excess of 12, 18 months, sometimes up to 2 years. As we get a bit older, the results last a little bit less. So maybe 1 year to 18 months in perhaps the 55 to 60-year-old patients. So it's variable from person to person how long a thread lift lasts. So it depends on the type of thread that's used and whether they stimulate collagen, and we only use the best threads in skin excellence clinics. And obviously the health of the patient and the age of the patient are important factors as well. So I've been offering thread lifts for over 10 years. I was one of the first doctors in the UK to train with thread lifting with Silhouette soft threads, and I'm now an international trainer for other doctors and surgeons with Silhouette soft in the UK and abroad. I also have a lot of experience with other threads, including Aptos threads, where I'm also a trainer and key opinion leader. So I have a huge amount of experience with thread lifting. I've undertaken in excess of more than 1,000 procedures over that time on patients, and thread lifting has to be done it's listed as a surgical procedure, so it has to be done in a regulated medical surgical facility, and both of our skin excellence clinics are regulated through the Care Quality Commission for the highest standards of safety, infection control, etc. Rest assured, when you're coming to skin excellence clinics, you're in safe hands. Not only do we have the experience and expertise with thread lifting, we also have the right clinical environment to do the treatment. So I think you would class us perhaps as a centre of excellence for thread lifting.